apologies for the wind. It's quite a breezy day today, but it's the only time I've really got that I can do this, and I need to get it done now. It's not the time of year to repot bonsais or aces or anything like that, but this kind of soil that I'm going to show you how to make needs to sit for a while. So it is currently what are we, the 10th of October on my watch. Obviously it's probably a week later for you guys, but yeah, 10th of October for me, and I'll be repotting around February time, so that gives it a good few months to sit, and it is just the best thing to do. Anyway, without further ado, let me show you the first thing we're going to need. So the first thing we're going to need is a bucket, because we're going to be doing some mixing. So this is the bucket I'm going to be using. Doesn't need to be massive. Obviously the bigger it is, the more you can mix in one go. But get yourself a bucket so you can mix all this together. Right, and this is the first ingredient, shall we call it, that I'm going to be putting into my bonsai soil. Now you can buy potting pine chips and proper bonsai pine chips, but for a very small bag it is very, very expensive. Now this is a 60 litre bag and cost me around £8 delivered. I couldn't find it in my local garden centre, but most garden centres normally do stock this type of thing, but the two near me didn't, so I just ordered some online. I think in the garden centres it's normally around £5–6. But yeah, you want the smallest chips you can, and you want them to be pine. Yeah, mini pine chips is ideal for this. So let's crack open the bag and have a look. So I'll bring you over. So in here, if it will focus, there you go. So as you can see, get your hands in. It's not a big pine, it's relatively small. Slightly smaller than this would probably be more ideal, but for money wise, this is the best thing you can get, really, because I think a small 5 litre bag of bonsai pine chips is like 11–12 quid, and that's for 5 litres. This is 60 litres and already half the price, so yeah, get some of that. Right, so what you want to do is you want to find a bucket, pot, whatever you've got to hand really, for that you don't mind gardening with. Flower pot, ideal, large flower pot. But you want to measure out 1 pot of your pine chips. And the reason why I say you want to use a pot is because the other ingredients are all going to be measured by the same pot. So you get hold of them and you chuck them in your bucket. So that's the first one done and in. Right. Next here we have perlite. Now perlite is an unusual substance. It feels like polystyrene. It's extremely light, but it's not polystyrene. It's a very chalky, as you can see there. Where's my finger there? If it'll focus. There we go. Yeah, it's very chalky. So it's not actually polystyrene, although it feels like it. It's like a chalky based substance. I'd say it's probably a cross between polystyrene and cat litter, if for those of you that own a cat. But this stuff is dirt cheap. I've only ordered a small 10 litre bag on this occasion. It's come in a plain bag though, so I can't show you the label. But perlite, Google it online. Most garden centres again will stock it, but you can buy a 100 litre bag, which is a big bag, for around 20 quid, 22 quid, something like that. So it's not expensive. Alright, so again with this we want 1 pot full. So you get your pot and you fill it up. Try not to make a mess. Yeah. this stuff gets blown around quite easily as well. As I say, it is extremely light, so if you're doing it like me on a windy day, wait until the wind dies down for a second. That's it, one full pot like that. As you can see, it's quite dusty as well, but full pot like that. And then what we do is we chuck it in with our bark. Like so. And give it a quick mix. That then gives you a really nice light texture start. Beautiful. Now theoretically you probably could just get away with, for things like acers and pines, just using that, but then you'd need your minerals and everything that you'd normally feed to a bonsai in regularly. But we're not just going to go for that, so bear with me and I'll grab the next ingredient. Right guys, so the next thing that we would need to add generally is a horticultural grit, which I thought I had a bag, which apparently I don't, which is really unusual. I've normally got a bag kicking about behind the shed somewhere, but I've either used it or it's gone walkies. So I'm going to make my own horticultural grit. Now what a horticultural grit is basically a very, very coarse sand, so to speak. Quite often the one I buy is the chippings from you know, like blue slate. If you've ever bought a bag of blue slate, at the bottom you always get that sort of gritty, powdery bits and bobs, you know, and that's the bag I normally buy. Again, it's another dirt cheap bag, 4 or 5 quid for a big bag. Drum's going off again. But yeah, I haven't got any, so what I've decided to do, let me spin you around. I've just got a bag, half a tub, sorry, of my standard small garden pebbles. That's a very, very, very coarse grit. Too coarse really, but what I'm then going to do is using some sharp sand, just standard sharp sand, as you can see there, which is one of the coarsest building sands you'd get anyway, and it does have some grit in there. So I've got half of my tub full of small gravel, smaller than pea gravel really, just, but yeah, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the tub up with sharp sand, and that will then act as my horticultural grit. And now it's starting to rain. Blooming typical. Oh well, I do need to dampen the soil anyway. Yeah, that'll do, 1 full bucket. So, if you've got horticultural grit and you're doing this properly, then you'd add 1 whole bucket of horticultural grit. If not, and you're making it up like me, the smallest gravel you can get, and sand. And that will then do the exact same job. So again, in the bucket that goes. Make sure it's all in. And then we'll mix that in. Get it all good and proper. And voila. Basically what we've created there at this stage, professional bonsai keepers that grow to show and whatnot would literally just use this. They wouldn't add anything else because they don't like any sort of pre-fertilizers in their soil. Well, I say professionals use this, professionals don't, but people that have been doing it a very long time and whatnot, if they're making their own, use that, but professionals would use this, and just this. It is a Japanese bonsai soil, which is literally like clay grit. You see that there? Yeah, it's like a clay grit. Now you don't need this. I mean, you're looking at nearly 30 quid for a bag of this, which is why a lot of people make their own. So we will continue making our much cheaper version of basically that does the same job as what this does. So I'll get the next ingredient and I'll snap back to you in a second. Alright guys, so the next thing we're going to add is this, some ericaceous soil. Now this is just a general ericaceous soil. This one's by Westland, just what my local garden centre had at the time. Now the reason we use ericaceous soil at this point is most things like acers, pines like a nice acidic soil anyway. Perlite, if you didn't know, is a very alkaline based substance, so by using this as well it overpowers the alkalinity of the perlite. But the perlite being in there, anything that doesn't need the acidic soil can take the alkalinity from the perlite. As you can see, it's still extremely windy. So I'm going to crack open this bag and we're going to add another pot of this. There we go, there's my pot of ericaceous soil. So we bring our bucket back and we tip that in the bucket. Now sometimes you might find big lumps of wood, bits of bark, sticks and whatnot in here. You want to try and remove all of that if you can. So all that in there. But yeah, any sort of really big lumps of bark that comes out, remove, and if there's any big bits that are clumped together, break it all up so it's all nice, light and fluffy, as you can see here. Look. So any lumps that's a bit of fertiliser, so break it up. Job's a good one. Obviously you can wear gloves for doing that, but once it's all broken up and all light and fluffy, again we just mix it in with everything else. As I say, you don't need this per se if you're using, you know, proper bonsai fertilisers and stuff when you're watering, but if you don't use bonsai fertilisers all the time, it's advisable to use them occasionally. But if you're like me and you don't, you know, they're expensive, if you don't use them all the time, then add some ericaceous soil to your mix and that will then give you the actual kind of fertiliser you need. Just make sure it's all mixed in good and proper. Voila. So now what you can see we have is a nice light fluffy mixture that will be very, very good free draining. As I say, grit would have been better than sand and stone, but I didn't have any and I'm not driving back out there to go and get some, so I improvised, as a lot of us do. But that'll do me. That should pot up most of the bonsais that I've got for this year. I might actually make another batch of this for storing and just do it all together. But what you want to do with this now is you want to put it in a container that is free draining. So either a big plant pot with holes in the bottom, or if put a hole in the bottom of your bucket if you don't mind, or even if you've got an empty bag like that, they actually are fully perforated throughout the bags, so any water that gets in can drain out. Stick it in one of them, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. Snap back to you. Right guys, so that's all now in my empty bag. I'm using an old John West bag, but it's not a very full bag, and I've got quite a few that I need to pot up this, or repot this season coming in February. So as I say, it's a good time to get this done now, but not a good time to repot. So repotting is in February, so I decided I was going to make another batch to go in there. So I'm almost finished mixing all this up. All I've got left to put in there now is the grit, but I had a brainwave after I'd mixed up the first lot. While I was building the pond, obviously I was sifting through the soil and stones to collect a load of extra stones for around the garden. So what I also did was I sifted a small amount down to its, that's where I got another small gravel from, but to its extremely smallest size, of the smallest sieve that I had, just in case I ever needed it for, sorry, hit the camera, for repotting. So now I've got some grit. If it'll focus, there you go. Yeah, like a fraction of the size of the first lot. So this time I won't be using a mixture of sand and grit. I will just be using micro pebbles, or whatever you want to call them. There's the odd part, there's a hole in the bag. I've just got it all over the grass because there's a hole in the bag, typically. Yeah, never mind. And now it's absolutely chucking it down and getting wet, but it's good for the soil. Anyway, I'm going to fanny about with this and I'll snap back to you in a second. So there's my bucket number 2. I'll get that into this bag as well, and then I'm going to get out the rain and show you what's next. Right then guys, so we're back under the pergola because it's absolutely raining like a good one now. Yep, so I did another half mixture as well off camera. So basically I wanted to fill up my bag. Let me show you. So my bag is now pretty much full to the top. And I've got a nice good mixture in there. So just to recap, we've got pine bark, ericaceous soil, horticultural grit and perlite. So 4 ingredients, and that'll make a really good bonsai soil. So as I say, you want it nice and light, nice and fluffy, and that will hold an awful lot of moisture and be very, very well draining as well. So what I'm going to do now is I am actually going to chuck this back out in the rain. I don't know if you can see there, but as I said, these kind of bags are fully perforated all the way down so they can breathe basically. And I'm going to leave this out in the weather to start breaking down basically all these big chunks of bark from the pine bark that we've put in. They'll start to break down and add all the nutrients and whatnot into the soil. And by the time I come to repotting, this bag will have shrunk, not a lot, but a good couple of inches, say. So where it's up to the bag at the minute here, it will be about up to the bag around here. So that will all start to sink. You can fluff it back up again, but it's just the natural process of the barks and the ericaceous compost just breaking down a bit more. So I'm going to leave that out in all weathers, let it get wet, let it dry out again, blah 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 blah. All the bugs will do their thing in there, and then come February that soil will then be absolutely perfect. I would recommend just refluffing it up a little bit to repot your bonsais. So best time to repot your bonsais, it's not, although I keep saying February might not be the ideal time, because it all depends obviously on the seasons and the weather. What you're looking for to repot your bonsai trees is everything in bud but nothing open. So with your aces, for instance, before the leaves open, they're all got little buds on. Same with all your trees like oak trees, maples, pines as well. You can see and tell on a pine when it's about to start leafing out or pining out, whatever you know, needling out. That's the word, needling out. And yeah, one thing is, once it's in bud, that's then the time to do it. You want it to be in bud because the flowers know best of when the season's changing, and when it's in bud it means it's going to start becoming spring, and you want to do it before they leaf out, because the root at that moment in time is the healthiest it can be. All the goodness and strength and everything is still in the root from over the winter. So you want to get it into its new soil, get the compost in, get the fertilizers in a new pot. That way it's well sat, well seated, ready for when the spring gets here. And within a couple of weeks of repotting it at that stage with all the nutrients you've just added, it should start to flower and leaf and bloom really, really well that year, as long as you do it good. But yeah, so that's my tips on making your own bonsai soil. If you've liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I hope I've earned your subscription today. Yeah, any questions, drop it in the comments. Catch you on the next one.